The desert highway stretched endlessly, black asphalt cutting through an ocean of sand and scrub. The only sound was the low hum of the car engine and the faint whistle of the wind brushing against the glass. Laura checked the map on her phone again. No signal, just the blinking blue dot, frozen in place, refusing to tell her where she actually was. Her brother, Mark, shifted in the passenger seat. "You sure this is still Route 66? He asked, his voice low, uneasy. Laura pressed her lips together. "It should be. There's nothing else out here." But something felt wrong. The road looked too empty, too quiet. No signs, no gas stations, no headlights of other cars. Just endless dark. Then, in the distance, a flicker. A neon glow. Faint, but real. A sign standing against the void. Motel. Vacancy. The letters buzzed weakly, as if the tubes hadn't been changed in decades. Relief washed over them both. A place to rest. A place to sleep. Laura steered off the highway, crunching onto gravel. That was the moment, though neither of them realized it yet, when they had already crossed a line. The motel looked like it had been plucked from another era. A single row of doors, peeling paint, windows covered with curtains that hadn't been opened in years. The sign flickered above them, its hum filling the silence. The air smelled of rust, dust, and something faintly metallic. Mark leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. "No cars," he murmured. Laura cut the engine. Maybe everyone's already asleep. They climbed out, gravel crunching beneath their shoes. The desert air was cold, too cold for summer. At the front office, the door creaked open with the lightest push. Inside, a bell sat on the counter, tarnished and green around the edges. Laura rang it. The sound echoed strangely, as though the walls were hollow, carrying the ring farther than it should have. From a back room, footsteps approached. The manager appeared, an older man, tall and thin, with a smile that never reached his eyes. His name tag was so faded it was impossible to read. "Travelers," he said softly, almost like he'd been waiting. "Welcome. You must be tired." Something about the way he said it made Laura's skin crawl. ... The man slid an ancient ledger across the counter. Not a computer, not even a cash register. Just a book filled with names written in faded ink. "Please sign," he said, pushing a pen toward them. Laura hesitated. The pen was heavy, too heavy, and cold to the touch. She scribbled her name, the ink sluggish, almost thick like syrup. Mark signed after her. The man nodded slowly, as if committing the names to memory. "Room 6, he said. "You'll find it comfortable. No keycards. Just a brass key on a ring, the number etched by hand." Laura and Mark left the office, and as soon as the door closed behind them, the night seemed to press in heavier, as though the desert itself was holding its breath. The door to their room stuck before it opened, wood swollen from years of neglect. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the scent of mildew and dust. A single bed sat against the wall, the blankets thin and scratchy. A lamp flickered weakly on the nightstand. Mark tossed his bag down. "Better than nothing." Laura didn't answer. She was staring at the vent above the bed. It was large, old-fashioned, with slats bent slightly out of shape. And from somewhere deep within, it came a faint sound. Not wind, not the creak of old pipes. Whispers, so soft she couldn't make out the words, but steady, continuous, like a conversation just out of reach. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Mark listened, then shook his head. "Just the air." But Laura wasn't so sure. She couldn't sleep. The whispers didn't stop. Sometimes they sounded closer, like someone standing right at the vent, murmuring into the room. Mark was already breathing deep, lost in exhausted sleep. But Laura kept her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. At one point, she thought she heard her own name, drawn out, soft, almost pleading. She sat up, heart pounding. The vent was dark, too dark, like the shadows inside went on forever. Laura slid out of bed and leaned closer. The air was cold against her skin. "Hello?" she whispered. The whisper stopped. Silence. And then, so faint she thought she imagined it, a laugh. Low, mocking. Laura stumbled back, bumping into the bed frame. Mark stirred, but didn't wake. She wanted to wake him, to leave right then. But something told her it was already too late. Laura woke to silence. The kind of silence that presses against the ears until it becomes its own sound. She blinked, expecting to see daylight sneaking through the thin curtains, but the room was still drenched in darkness. Her phone screen glowed when she tapped it. 7:13 a.m. And yet outside the window, the world looked like it was still caught in the middle of the night. Mark stirred awake, groaning. "Power outage?" Laura shook her head. "No. Look, my phone says it's morning." Mark frowned, moving to the curtains. He pulled them apart. Nothing changed. The parking lot, the desert, the flickering neon sign, they all sat in that strange, endless twilight. Not dawn, not night, just a void in between. Uneasy, they decided to head back to the office. Maybe there was an explanation. But when they stepped outside, the motel felt different. The row of doors stretched farther than it had before. Too many rooms, numbers climbing past what the building could hold. Room 10, room 11, room 27. Laura stopped walking. This isn't right. Mark looked pale, his jaw tightening. We must have gone the wrong way. But there was only one direction to go. The gravel crunched beneath their shoes, the air heavy and stale. Every door looked the same, curtains drawn, silent. And yet, faintly, from behind some of the doors came sounds, whispers, breaths, a chair scraping against a floor, but never loud enough to be certain. Finally, they reached the office. The bells still sound the counter, but the room smelled stronger now, like iron and mildew mixed together. The manager appeared again, as if he had been waiting behind the door. His eyes didn't blink. "You slept well?" he said, though it didn't sound like a question. Laura stepped forward. "What's going on here? Why is it still dark?" The man tilted his head. "Dark?" He gestured toward the window. "It's morning! The sun is shining!" Laura turned. Through the office window, the world outside was indeed bathed in daylight, bright, almost painfully so. But when she looked back at the door they'd come through, the lot was still locked in that strange twilight. Two realities, two versions of the same place. Mark grabbed Laura's arm. "We're leaving. Now." The manager's smile twitched wider. No one ever really leaves. They ran, out of the office, past the endless stretch of doors, back toward their car. But the car wasn't there. The gravel lot was empty, the sign buzzing above, casting its pink and blue glow. Laura's chest tightened. It was right here! And then she saw it. At the far end of the motel row, half buried in shadow, their car, doors open, headlights dim. They ran to it, gravel scattering beneath their feet. Laura yanked the driver's door, but it wouldn't budge. The inside was wrong, warped somehow, as if the seats melted into the floor, the wheel twisted into itself. Mark swore under his breath. What the hell is this place? From behind them, doors began to creak open, one after another, slow, deliberate. And though no one stepped out, the air filled with whispers. Hundreds of them. They fled back into their room, slamming the door shut, chest heaving, sweat cold on their skin. The whispers never stopped. Now they were louder, circling the room, seeping through the walls. Laura pressed her hands over her ears. It's the vents. It's all coming from the vents. Mark climbed onto the bed, pulling at the grate. Rust flaked off under his fingers until finally, with a screech, it came loose. The air inside was freezing, and from the black depths beyond, the voices surged louder, overlapping, dozens at once. And then, through the chaos, they heard something that froze them. Their own names, whispered clearly, over and over. Laura. Mark. Mark dropped the grate, stumbling back. No! No, no, no! Laura stepped closer, against her better judgment, staring into the dark shaft. And just for a moment, she saw them. Faces, pressed against the inside of the metal, pale and stretched. Mouths moving in unison. Eyes wide, unblinking. Then they were gone. The vent exhaled cold air, and the whispers fell silent. The room seemed to wait, as if the motel itself was holding its breath. Laura couldn't stop shaking. The vent, the voices, the faces. Mark paced the room, running both hands through his hair. We can't stay here. We can't. But when he reached for the door, Laura grabbed his arm. Wait! Her eyes had caught something, tucked beneath the nightstand. A corner of yellowed paper, curled with age. She pulled it free. It was an old photograph. A group of travelers stood smiling in front of the same motel, decades younger. Their clothes were dated, their hairstyles old-fashioned. Yet the neon sign above them was unmistakable. On the back, written in faded ink, 1956, last stop before California. But what made Laura's stomach drop wasn't the photograph itself. It was the fact that she recognized one of the faces. The man standing at the edge of the group, smiling faintly, was the motel manager. He looked exactly the same, not a day older. The whispers returned, louder now, echoing in rhythm with the buzzing neon outside. Mark snapped. I'm not waiting here to find out what this place wants. He pulled the door open. The hallway stretched again, longer than before, lined with doors that seemed to pulse faintly, as though something behind them was breathing. They walked cautiously. Every few feet, one of the doors rattled. A knob turned. Something pressed from the other side. Laura whispered, Don't look. Just keep walking. But she made the mistake of glancing sideways. One door was open a crack, just enough for her to see an eye staring back, not blinking, not human. She tore her gaze away, heart hammering. From behind another door came a voice, clear this time. Help us. Mark stopped dead. His face was pale, sweat glistening at his temple. They're trapped. But when Laura listened closer, the tone shifted. The same voice repeated the words again, only slower. Help us stay. They found themselves at the office again, or what looked like it. The bell sat on the counter, but it was cracked now, covered in something that looked too dark to be rust. The manager was there, waiting as always. His smile stretched unnaturally wide. You signed the ledger, he said softly. You belong here now. Laura slammed the photograph onto the counter. That's you, from 60 years ago. What are you? The man's eyes gleamed, his smile never faltering. Caretaker, he whispered. Keeper of voices. Every traveler needs a final stop. Mark stepped forward, fists clenched. We're not staying. The manager chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. They all say that. and with a motion too quick to see, he slid the ledger open. The ink of their names shimmered as if alive, twisting across the page. Their names were no longer written. They were etched, carved deep into the paper like wounds. Laura felt her chest tighten, breath shallow, as if something inside her was being pulled toward that book. They ran again, but this time the hallways didn't lead back to their room. Instead, they found a stairwell descending into the ground beneath the motel. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with the stench of mold and damp stone. At the bottom was a basement filled with old furniture, broken signs, and suitcases stacked in corners, belongings of travelers who had never left. Maura picked one up. The tag was still attached. A name, a date. Mark whispered, "It's all real. Every story, it's all real." And then they heard it. The whispering wasn't in the vents anymore. It was here, surrounding them. Voices layered over one another, some crying, some laughing, all murmuring in endless rhythm. The walls weren't walls at all. They were lined with metal shafts, hundreds of them, each like a vent, leading upward, carrying the voices throughout the motel. And inside some of them, faces pressed forward, pale and desperate, mouthing words that never reached the air. Laura stumbled back, tears stinging her eyes. They're inside the walls." Mark's voice broke. "This place, it's them." The voices grew louder, overlapping until the sound became unbearable. And then, through the chaos, the manager's voice whispered close, though he wasn't there. "You can join them, or you can trade." The air turned colder still. Shadows stretched across the basement, bending toward them. Laura gripped her brother's hand, eyes wild. "What does he mean? Trade what?" The voice laughed softly. "Another soul. One stays, one leaves." Mark's face drained of color. No way. "We're leaving together." But Laura already felt the motel shifting around them, its walls breathing, its voices demanding. The choice was not theirs alone. The whispering rose into a chorus, pressing against their skulls, vibrating in their bones. And in that moment, Laura realized the truth. The motel didn't just want them. It wanted the living to bring more, to feed it, to keep the voices alive. Her hand slipped from Mark's, and for the first time, she wondered, who would it take? The basement shuddered, dust falling from the ceiling. The walls pulsed like living flesh, every vent exhaling a breath colder than ice. Laura clutched Mark's hand tighter, though the shadows seemed determined to pull them apart. The voice of the manager slithered through the darkness. "One stays, one leaves. The ledger must balance." Mark shouted into the void, his voice cracking. "We're not playing your game." The shadows recoiled, just slightly. The whispers faltered. Laura's eyes darted across the room. She saw a broken suitcase split open on the ground. Inside lay another ledger, older, pages rotted with age. Names filled every line. Dozens, hundreds, some crossed out, others smeared beyond recognition. And at the very bottom of one page, she saw a name she recognized. Their mother's. Laura's breath caught. She hadn't spoken that name in years. Their mother had disappeared on a road trip decades ago, leaving behind only questions. She stumbled forward, clutching the ledger. "Mark, she was here. She never left." Mark's face twisted in horror, his voice breaking. "No, that's not possible. That..." Before he could finish, a vent above them groaned, and from the darkness within, a whisper escaped. Laura, her mother's voice, faint, broken, but unmistakable. Laura dropped to her knees, tears streaming. Mom? The shadows trembled with delight. The manager stepped from the shadows, though his shape flickered at the edges, as if he were both there and not. His smile was endless. Every guest leaves something behind. A name, a memory, a voice. Your mother gave hers, and now, so must you. Laura stood, clutching the old ledger. You can't keep us here. We didn't agree to this. The manager tilted his head, eyes gleaming like glass. You signed. The moment ink touched paper, your path was sealed. He raised a long, skeletal hand. The shadows surged upward, crawling like smoke toward them. Mark grabbed a broken pipe from the ground, swinging wildly. Stay back! The manager didn't flinch. His smile widened. The motel cannot be fought. It can only be fed. Laura's mind raced. She thought of the photograph, of the countless names in the ledgers, of her mother's voice whispering from the vents. If one stayed, the other might escape. But escape to what? To carry the motel's memory? To spread its legend? The shadows pressed closer. The whispers rose into a single, overwhelming cry. Laura turned to her brother. His face was pale, his eyes wide, but he gripped her hand. No matter what happens, he said, voice breaking, we go together. The words tore her in two, but then an idea. She raised the ledger high, pages trembling. If this book binds us, then maybe breaking it sets us free. Before the manager could react, she hurled the ledger into the shadows. The brittle pages tore, ink spilling like blood across the floor. The motel screamed, a sound so loud and piercing, it felt like the world itself was ripping open. The shadows writhed, twisting violently. The walls cracked, vents collapsing inward. Laura and Mark clung to each other as the basement crumbled around them. When Laura opened her eyes, she was lying on gravel. The motel was gone. Only the desert stretched around them, washed in early morning light. The sun finally risen, warm against her face. Beside her, Mark groaned, pushing himself upright. Their car sat just a few feet away, untouched. It was as if nothing had happened, but Laura knew better. She reached into her pocket, heart stopping when she felt paper there. Pulling it out, she found a torn fragment from the old ledger. Their names, still etched deep. Mark saw it too. His face went pale. We didn't escape, did we? Laura stared at the horizon, where the sun bled over the desert. In the wind, faint but undeniable, came a whisper. Their mother's voice. See you soon. The desert fell silent again. And behind them, just for a moment, a neon glow flickered on the horizon. Motel, vacancy.